yes, it's preparing, it's preparing, it's preparing. We are live, everyone. Hello, it is Reid Mihalko from readaboutsex.com, and I am here with the amazing Krista Reid of Permission Productions. And I just have to say, this is our first Facebook Live back from me being in Facebook jail. And they let me back on Facebook, but they wouldn't let me Facebook Live. And that was because you and I, Krista, did a video several weeks ago about sex toys at play parties. And I got so excited that I showed everybody my rainbow dildo, and Facebook was like, oh, no, 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 no. You, sir, goodbye, good day. So I'm excited that we're back and I'm Facebook Living, and I'm just all nervous. But we're gonna talk about finding pleasure in times of turmoil, especially when you're feeling like a failure, and we're gonna talk about that. So, Krista, how are you? Who are you for the people who haven't met you yet?
Hey y'all, my name is Krista Reid. I'm a sex positive facilitator, consent educator, and burlesque producer based in Colorado. And I love trying to figure out how to still bring sex positive community into this virtual space. But it's not always easy. And I think with all the intense emotions going around, especially over this past week, I've definitely noticed the theme of a lot of people feeling really heavy, feeling really down. And I know that's been true for me. Yeah, it's been tough to feel enthusiastic and to stay in pleasure and self-love. And yeah.
Thanks for so many things. For folks who don't know, Krista and I have been co-facilitating virtual play parties almost every month. Every once in a while, there's a weekend retreat, the virtual intimacy retreat, folks, and then they'll do a play party. So that will be the play party for the month. But we've been running one consistently, and we were doing the orientations to invite people to come check out if they'd like to be a part of the play party experience the way that we run it. And we recorded our Halloween orientation. So now that's automated such that you can click the link that's in the video description and go check out our little 25-minute orientation to see if the way we throw play parties is something that you would like to be a part of. And then we have a little mini quiz. And if you pass the quiz, then you get put on the invite list for the tickets so that we can create these wonderful experiences. And I'm noticing now, for a bunch of different reasons, that I feel like I'm struggling with finding pleasure in my life. I've been going through feeling like a failure. I'll talk more about that in a minute. But the beacon in the darkness, even though I'm just feeling really crappy today, is, in a couple of weeks, we get to play and create and hold space for people to connect erotically virtually. And that I can feel a little hope of a little joy springing up in my soul.
Or is it just the shine of my ring light off of my glasses?
It could be the shine of your ring light. So before I talk about, a little bit more about feeling like a failure right now, what do you want to share about finding pleasure in times of turmoil?
Well, Reid, finding pleasure in times of turmoil has been on my mind. This is a topic that came up for me the other week when we were thinking about what to talk about. I went through a breakup with a person who I'd been seeing through the many months of COVID lockdown round one. And after that breakup, I felt like it was a really valuable time to take a pause on my sexual activity and just bring my energy back home and ground into myself. So I decided to take 2 months of intentional self-pleasuring fasting and celibacy, and focus on my energetic body and like what it really means to arrive in sensation in the body, instead of just going to these leaps into route patterns of masturbation and whatever that might look like. I'm allowed to say that and not get put back in Facebook jail.
I think the dildo is what pushed it over the edge for people. It might have also been in that we had sex toys in the title,
That's
where we could
problematic.
have been using like coded
Yep.
language to because Facebook is being so generous with letting us talk.
Thanks,
about
Facebook.
things. Thanks, Facebook.
Hate you, love you.
So you're talking about self-pleasuring.
Yeah. So in concluding my 2 months of taking that break and just being with myself, I got to break my fast on Halloween. And I, even on nights of just kind of feeling apathetic about it and wondering why I was taking this break, because I felt like I was denying myself access to more pleasure in my life without really getting that much back. But when I broke my fast on Halloween, I had one of the most profound orgasms that I've ever had in my life. And it really, what I took away from that was an appreciation for kind of just how that pause and how that self-presence and that time of reflection over 2 months led into what I perceive as a buildup of energy that had all this deeper meaning and significance about where I am, what I'm trying to create right now. And yeah, it was like this serious come to God orgasm. And it reminds me, even though I am like, in so many ways, I feel like my professional life is in these like weird, inaccessible spaces, trying to figure out how to make things work virtually, and not being able to be connected with all of you and be in-person space and be holding events, which is one of my big passions, is creating safer sex positive containers. And in spending all this time alone and having that profound experience, I'm reminded that you can still let in, there's still so much to let in, I think.
Do you feel like when you were doing your fast, that you found like your palette to find pleasure expanded too? Like, obviously, like if we're talking about like virtual play parties, we're talking about pleasure, like there's a tendency for people to think of just like erotic sexual pleasure, like genitally based pleasure, or the erotic experience of like seeing other people play and trying to figure out like how do we have sexy times via our technology. But like when you were fasting, like did you feel like your other ways of experiencing pleasure were heightened?
Yeah, I think what comes to mind around this, Reid, is a really beautiful reflection that one of my collaborators in the burlesque troupe that I direct, Boulder Burlesque, mentioned yesterday. And what she posited is, in moments when we, for whatever reason, don't feel access to self-love, whether that's because we're having a really hard time because of what's going on in the world, or because we're trying like something new that feels different and challenging, which is kind of how my fast felt, we can turn to self-acceptance. So not even having to say, to like be able to show up and be saying, you know, I love myself so much, I'm so great, I'm taking care of myself, all these things that self-love might connote, just bringing a level of self-acceptance and saying, I am here right now, I am me, and like, I am, like, this is what is happening in this moment. And just being willing to touch myself and be present with sensation was that, like, being present in that self-acceptance too, that is kind of a baseline of building self-love. Because if we're not accepting ourselves, then we can't get to that higher level of really being able to embody love for ourselves too.
Yeah, what that brings up for me is, like, right now, I'm just having, I mean, all the election energy for folks, and I have a lot of friends who are very, very stressed out leading up into the election, and are still kind of like, maybe they're feeling a little bit better, but they're still like, you know, it's not a done deal yet. Things aren't, you know, complete around the election. So like, you know, supporting friends and whatnot, but also like feeling, you know, I've got an event for sex educators that starts next week, and I feel like a failure. You know, my good friend of mine, Betty Dodson, passed away on Halloween, and like, in ways that I will beat myself up. You know, could I have been a better friend? You know, she's gone now. Like, all these things are kind of like stacking up. And when you say the acceptance piece, you know, part of the title for today was, especially, you know, when you feel like a failure. And that's part of my way of accepting that, is to kind of talk about it. Like, I'm a little bit of a verbal processor, but like, my acceptance for myself is also like, this isn't something I have to hide. Like, my father hid all of his failures. A way that I can, and he did the best that he could with what he had, but like, the way that I can be different so that I'm not turning into my parents is, I can not hide it. Like, I can share it. I can, and hopefully as an educator, like, I can normalize it and be like, hey, like, if you're feeling like a failure, you know, fucking 8 months into the pandemic, I'm here
That's
too.
probably
Like,
normal.
yeah,
It's probably as normal as the number of people who have HSV1.
I never thought about imposter syndrome or feeling like failure being. I never thought to use the analogy that it's as common or as prevalent as herpes 1, and so many of us do not want to talk about it, because then you'll never kiss me if I have failure syndrome, imposter syndrome,
On my
simplex 1.
mouth.
Yes, on my mouth. So around, like, let's, for people who are interested in the virtual play parties, like, what is it for you around those events? Like, how can learning about or considering coming to an event like that help during times of turmoil? Because I can imagine some people being like, oh my goodness, like, how's that going to help me with my imposter syndrome or my feels of failure?
Yeah, that is such a great question, Reid. I think one of the most amazing things that I got in touch with pretty early on, when I started hosting the virtual play parties back in April with Dr. Hazel Grace Yates, was the potential in these virtual spaces to have this lower barrier of entry. Because unlike showing up in an in-person space, when you come to a virtual play party, you're still in your own home. Your nervous system is still surrounded by things that make you feel safe and hopefully like protected and comfortable when you're in your own space. And you get to choose how you show up on the screen And we have a really beautiful consent system that gets woven in to the way we show up in those spaces that make it really, really easy for you to have space for yourself and to make it clear what your boundaries are to everybody else in the group. So you can really feel into what's okay and what's not okay. And you can witness and watch. It's 100% okay to show up and just watch. You don't have to participate or be overtly sexual. And it's 100% okay to show up and just do without really even watching what other people are doing. And I know for me, being in my own space and having that sense of safety and like lack of encroachment, I think, of just being able to expand into my own energy and share it out with whoever is present at the party. Even for me, that has helped me open up and do things that I haven't previously done or felt comfortable doing at in-person play parties. Like drop into self-pleasuring more comfortably and yeah. Reid, what do you think? Like, what do you think the virtual play party space brings around that?
Well, I know for me, a lot of my journey, even being, a sex geek and as extroverted as I am, is a lot of my growth in my life came from like walking towards what I felt ashamed of and um, getting the courage to ask for what I want. And because my journey was figuring out that I'm this queer, polyamorous, slutty guy, and giving myself permission to like be that, and to nerd out and try to figure out like how to do that safely, like how to leave the campsite better than I found it. Which is, there's no guarantees you're not going to freak people out or hurt people's feelings or even fuck things up and end up harming people. But like the courage to go in that direction has made me a better person. And in times of turmoil, uh, given me the opportunity to, like, even if we think of shame as you're going through a turmoil phase, like you're like, I'm shutting down because like no one will love me if I tell them about this, this desire. um Building my shame muscles to walk towards those scary things, that has made me a better person. Like it even during my accountability process, which I'll put a link in the comments, like to be able to like have support and reach out to people for help, to figure out better ways of like, if people feel harmed by me, how do I show up for them? Because we can feel ashamed that we missed an opportunity or didn't understand, that somebody felt like they couldn't say no, or all the complexities of the human experience. But to not have shame shut you down, exercising those muscles to learn how to be stronger and better as a human, like all that stuff's been really helpful, that kind of resiliency. and and for me, like the reward isn't just that you're more resilient and you're learning tools to be a better person, but like for me, sexually speaking, I've gotten to explore and experience almost everything I've ever wanted to create. And the pleasure on the other side of the shame, and it's not just the physical pleasure, but the relief of I don't have to hide who I am anymore. Like I can, like, I mean, I even built a career around it, like helping people learn how to embrace their own shame, whether that's the shame of I want to be monogamous and I'm surrounded by all these polyamorous people, like to not be ashamed of those things. to help people with those things, to help myself, there's pleasure from the relief. Like I've never worn a bra, but I can imagine what my friends talk about, like at the end of the day when you take your bra off and you're like, oh, oh, that feels so good. Like the relief of taking your shame off and not having to hide who you are. Um, that means a lot to me. And I also get to explore my sexuality and experience things. Like I haven't had a physical threesome, since we started with the pandemic. So I miss my threesomes, but I can use all my skills to ask for what I want and get creative in other ways. So the virtual play parties, like I miss in-person play parties, but like these have been very restorative for me, and fun and nerdy to learn how to interact and connect more powerfully in erotic ways through technology. Like that's been huge for me. That felt like a very long answer, but a lot came up in answering it for me. Like that's how I feel about this stuff. That's why these things are important to me.
Yeah.
Whether people come to the play parties or not, like that people are signing up for the orientation and doing the orientation and knowing they could come to a play party if they wanted to. That alone, I know for a couple of people who've done the orientation, that was a big step for them.
Sounds like some self-acceptance at work.
Yeah. So like it's not whether you come or not to the event that labels you the success, that you're even considering it and exploring, that you're even exploring your sexuality ever, especially during a pandemic. Like you're already a champion of the human experience. And I think that can help a lot of people, because so many of us are just feeling like failures right now.
Yep.
Oh, that got deep.
Part of what I'm hearing you speak to, Reid, is that there is this profound magical alchemy in what happens when we choose that bravery and showing up with each other in a virtual space, even though there's this ongoing acknowledgement that it doesn't feel the same as in person, and that there's this extra level of creativity that we're asked to bring, and this different lens of how are we going to connect? How are we going to enliven this experience? And on one hand, there can be a sense of failure or disconnection there because it's not like it was before. And it's not in person. And there's certain things we're just not going to be able to get. And on the other hand, there's this profound humanness that is our resiliency, our adaptiveness, and our capacity to create new ways of being with each other and new ways of saying, I can be okay with myself in this moment, in this space.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing. Well, I'm noticing that this talk has gone longer than the orientation takes.
Turmoil. Takes some time to talk through.
Any final things to share?
Just want to throw out the reminder to folks that, like Reid said, attending the orientation and following curiosity or following what feels good for you. We welcome and encourage you to come check out more about what our community is about. Our next play party will be November 19th, and we'll be having a theme of stuffed that night. More about that as you get your invitation after taking the orientation. But we'd love to have you there. We'd love to answer any questions for you, so feel free to comment and leave questions on this video. And yeah, wherever you are, however you're feeling right now, we're with you, and it's okay to be where you are.
Thanks. All right, Krista. I'll see you soon.
Love you, Reid.
Love you too. Mwah.
Love y'all out there. Bye.
Bye. Ah! I have to turn it off. Turn it off.